Hey, Professor, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Loud and clear, yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. How are you doing?
Good, good. I well, first of all, I want to say sorry, we only have like just me today. Like my
Hmm.
partner, she got flu yesterday, so she's not able to join us today. So
Okay.
just me today, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I want to start off to introduce ourselves. We are a
Okay.
student-formed research team across UC campus. I go to school here at UC San Diego. Majority of our members are here in San Diego local, and we also have a
Hmm.
couple of members from Santa Barbara and UC
Hmm.
Riverside. And our goal for our research is to fund a business kind of solution to reduce plastic fiber or microplastic fiber that go into our water source. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe we're trying to I wouldn't say we want to zero them out, but at least we want to understand what is is something we're dealing with today every single day,
Hmm.
and also is there a way that maybe we can stop them going to our water source like that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Well, the
Hmm.
good thing, a good thing about us is we have a 10 a close to a team that close to 10 member, but
Hmm.
six of us are in business major, so we have zero
Hmm.
experience in marine biology and
Okay.
chemistry background. So that's why we're right now we're just in the early stage. We're interview a lot of experts in this
Hmm.
field and trying to learn what is the thing we're
Hmm.
tackling on. Yeah. But by the way,
Okay.
Professor, I really like the background, the painting you had in the back, the flower. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. You're the second person today to mention that. It's a Chinese postdoc gave it to me years ago. I
Yeah.
I love it, but it's yeah, you're the second one to tell me that, so
Yeah.
must
Like,
be something special today.
yeah, it does. Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
to start off, we did our team did some previous research on your your work.
Hmm.
Uh, would you be okay to share, to maybe do a brief introduction because I can share with the rest of my team member today.
Sure. Yeah. So the part of my work that's most so I'm sort of broadly involved in research on water pollution of many different kinds. And the part that's most relevant to what you're talking about is our projects involving biotechnology to make forms of plastic that are biodegradable, that have similar physical properties to the plastics that are made from fossil fuels, but that are more susceptible to microbial digestion. And so they will not persist as long in the environment. So, if you know, should going for zero is a good goal. You want to reduce the amount of the input of plastic waste. But another approach is to try and make forms of plastic that are less persistent. And so there's a group on campus, there's a center called the Center for Renewable Materials. And they are involved in chemistry of converting lipids from algae into compounds that are useful for plastics. And they have spun off companies. There's a company called Algenesis Materials that makes plastics out of algae biomass. That's where we come in. We study algae, growth of algae, sort of technology for growing algae, and
Hmm.
producing biofuels and bioplastics, basically.
I see.
And so we worked a lot on that. And then most recently, we did an experiment. We used these large mesocosms, so big tanks with thousands of liters, and we set up sort of experimental ponds or lakes. And we did one where we added microplastics of three different kinds of material. One thermoplastic called thermopolyurethane called
Hmm.
elastolam, that's used in a lot of like coatings and
Yeah.
things for like wires and stuff. And then two thermopolyurethanes made from biomass of algae, two different formulations that were made by this company. and looked at their and added a bunch of different levels and looked at their effects on pond ecosystems. And what we found that was most interesting was that the petroleum-based plastic caused algae blooms. So the tanks that had a lot of petroleum plastic the water turned green. So algae proliferated, which is what often happens when you have like nutrient pollution. So if you have like fertilizers running off of farm fields or sewage and things like that, it causes the water to, get to very high densities of algae that make the water turn green. And we found that this plastic caused the same kind of effect, which hasn't ever been shown before. And we think it mainly happened because the plastic was very harmful for invertebrates, zooplankton that eat algae. And so we found a lot lower densities of algae in the tanks that contained high concentrations of this one kind of plastic. The two bioplastics, which we know are both much more biodegradable, they did not have, they had much smaller effects. So they had some detectable effect, but it was much weaker. And so that leads us to think that, replacing plastics made from fossil fuels with plastic made from biomass of algae will cause plastics to be less persistent and also have smaller effects on aquatic organisms and aquatic ecosystems. So that's been that was our first project, and now we're working on sort of how plastic gets incorporated into food webs. So whether it tends to bioaccumulate or not. So if it gets eaten by small invertebrates that later get eaten by bigger things like fish or birds, that sort of its concentrations might increase. So sort of similar to heavy metals or certain kinds of organic compounds that accumulate up the food chain. So as you go from small things like algae and zooplankton, concentration goes up towards big things like fish or whales or marine mammals, things like that. So we're working on that. So that in terms of sort of solutions-based things, we're really interested in sort of making new kinds of plastics that are designed to be less persistent and to break down in the environment more. But certainly reducing the use of plastics is a good idea as well. You have to any opportunity for improving over current practices is a good idea.
Yeah. Wow. I love it. I mean, that I think it's kind of weird to say, but 5 months ago, before we started doing this research, I wasn't thought about like plastic was a big deal. Not until I started realize, oh my gosh, like our world is literally built by plastic. Because I have a huge like a bad habit of online shopping. And then one day I was about to throw away my old garments. I realized all of them is made by polyesters. And then I did some research, because as a business background, I have no idea in chemistry. So I did some, it's kind of bad to say, but I have no background, in chemistry. Then I did some research. And I found out it's all plastic. And I started realize, oh my gosh, like the things we wear every single day is plastic. Like, and now I'm about to do all those like 5 or 6 t-shirt, just to the landfill. Now, like I'm part of it, like causing the problem. So, well,
we all are. It's not it's not like it's caused by a few pieces. Everybody who's sort of part of the modern world is contributing to this problem, and so it's not a problem that any of us will solve individually by changing our own individual behavior.
That's when we start have this ideas like maybe we can be the connection from scientists and business world. We can connect the two, then have a solution to solve the problem.
I mean, absolutely. And I think from working with Algenesis, the company that makes these bioplastics, I mean, that's solving the scientific problem is not going to get you anywhere. It has to be it has to be something that makes economic sense, and
Yeah.
that can really. And so we're really focused on algae because algae grow much faster than, so you can make this out of any plant that makes lipids. So you can, use soybeans or palm oil
Uh-huh.
or something like that. But, the amount of land in the world that's available for farming is very limited.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Whereas algae, an algae cell can divide every few hours. And so they can produce a lot more material in a much smaller space. So they just, increase their biomass much faster. And so you can potentially generate, a lot more material with a lot less land, having to
Yeah.
be traded. And there's only so much good farmland in the world where you can grow
Yeah.
food, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not, there's, a lot of parts of the world are not good for growing food. And so, the sort of good farmland is really limited. And so if you take it from growing food and start growing, other things like bioenergy or bioplastics,
Yeah.
then you run into a problem there.
I see. I yeah. I'm in shock. I really love the what you guys are doing right now. Like another thing I want to touch on is like, was there any like a negative effect of biodegradable plastic?
Yeah, I mean, so they also we found somewhat less zooplankton. Here, can I share my screen? Yeah, here we
Yeah,
go. I can
yeah.
I can I can just show you. I was just looking at this data recently. Let me find it. Okay, there you are. So these are the graphs. So so if you look at this graph here, so this is at the beginning of the experiment. This is after like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And this is
Hmm.
the density. So this is the density of zooplankton. So these are invertebrates that are like 1 to 3 millimeters long in the water. And this red line is elastolan. That's a fossil fuel based plastic. And then these
Hmm.
two blue and green ones are TPU, two different thermopolyurethanes made from algae. And so you can see that there's a big decrease in zooplankton density with the elastolan, the fossil fuel one. And there
Hmm.
is a decrease with the other two as well,
Yeah.
but much less of one. So at high densities of plastic, out
Yeah.
here you have essentially no zooplankton with the elastolan, whereas you have still less zooplankton, but still a good number of zooplankton with
I
the other
see.
two. It's there is no free lunch, right? There is
Yeah.
there is still an
Yeah.
effect of these other materials as well, but that effect is smaller and it goes away faster because those materials will eventually break down into CO2 and just kind of go back to being and not being inert.
Yeah. So, was there like any like nano plastic waste will be created in the process, or maybe like a smaller piece of like microplastic, while this this biodegradable plastic is degrading in the process.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you can measure its loss. So we didn't measure, smaller particle size. Like we didn't
Hmm.
go look for sort of what happens to these particles. We ground them all into the same size particles. We know from
Yeah.
other experiments that if you put these bioplastics out, that they will, after 3 or 4 months, they will have completely decomposed, that there'll be nothing left. And we can measure the CO2. So as bacteria eat them and
Uh-huh.
degrade them, they release CO2. So you can, confirm that they are, at least in large, at least a good part of it is being respired and turned into CO2. And so, we know that it is, completely
Hmm.
degraded after some period of time. So it may go through a number of intermediate stages, the sort of
Hmm.
process of converting from,
Yeah,
the plastic as you started with and eventually being fully degraded, probably goes through a bunch of intermediary steps. We don't really know what those are, but we know that eventually you wind up getting back to CO2,
I
which is where
see.
you started in the
Uh,
first place.
I
Mhm.
see. I see. Well, I think another question I want to ask is maybe this is more on the business side. Is
Yeah.
this IG plastic is it capable for massive production? Like maybe we can have like use like this
Yeah.
IG to made from like polyester fibers, like or like
Yeah.
single use and stuff.
Yeah, I mean it is, yes. The problem is really it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem, is that,
Yeah, yeah.
so the company, so like so right now you can buy shoes from a company called Blue View that are made of these bioplastics.
Hmm.
And they will degrade. Like, we know that they will degrade. And so the problem is, if you wanted to manufacture, a lot of something with this, you would need a lot of algae biomass as to put,
Hmm.
to make your product. And there's
Yeah,
no companies around that make quantities of algae biomass like that. It's the same problem with bioenergy from algae, is that, there's not a supply of algae to feed the industry, and therefore there's not a demand. You have to have the supply and the demand at the same
yeah,
time, right? Like, nobody
yeah.
makes, nobody's going to make products based on this unless they have a reliable supply of the sort of parent material, the feedstock that goes into it. And
I
so,
see.
nobody is, there are companies that are trying to do that. There's a company locally called Viridos that's making aviation fuel, like airplane fuel
Uh-huh.
from algae. But there's, until you have, they can't sort of build a big enough facility to do that until
Yeah,
there's a big market for that, and there
I
isn't really a
see.
market for that until there's a supply. And so it's kind of
I
it,
see.
it's kind of a chicken and
Yeah,
the egg problem.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's really, I mean, it's like all these technologies, the problem is really scaling up, right? Like, you can
Hmm.
you can do it for sure at a limited scale. You can make a lot of algae biomass, at some limited scale, and make a bunch of products out of it. And for things that are valuable in small quantities, that's a
Hmm.
viable business. So there's a bunch of companies that make, like, dietary lipids, like fatty acids, like omega-3 fatty acids, like the
Uh-huh.
fatty acids you get from eating fish. Like, the reason fish are
Yeah.
good for you is these omega-3 fatty acids. And so there's a bunch of companies that make supplements that, you can go buy pills at, Whole Foods or the grocery store, that have these omega-3 fatty acids, but
Hmm.
those are like, $20 for a little jar, right? So
Yeah.
you can make a small quantity of that and have it be a viable business. But things
Yeah.
like plastic and energy, like, you need a large quantity, right? It's not it's
Yeah.
not it's not
Yeah.
valuable in small quantities, only in large quantities.
Yeah, I agree. We recently had an interview with a business owner, and their business was using biodegradable like fibers, and their
Mhm.
t-shirt was go up to $200 plus, and yeah, so
Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, and I mean, why, it's really, yeah. So I mean, showing that you can scale up from, to produce something, it requires a large initial investment. I mean, it's the
yeah,
same as, like, petroleum. Like, to get oil out of the ground, you have to build an oil well, that
yeah,
might take you decades to build, right? Like, it's a huge investment,
yeah,
but you need to make this huge initial investment. And so, the problem with these technologies is that nobody has been able to make the big enough initial investment to sort of have it be, a reliable source of materials.
yeah, yeah. And also, we also talked to some of the policymakers in the county and also in the state. They were
Mhm.
kind of mentioned there was like this disconnection between the policymaker and the business owners and also manufacturers. So the triangle, like none of the three parties is in communication in the United States right now
Yeah.
compared to a lot of like EU European nations.
Mhm.
They're constantly on communicating out what fibers is being allowed or percentage is allowed in garment and what
Right.
material has been. So I think um, there's a lot of like misconsumption right now. Like even for ordinary
Yeah.
people like me, like consumers, I
Yeah.
I really thought if I throw this away, throw this like plastic cap away, I would be just like,
Mhm.
recycling it. Then I realized there's like
Yeah.
so much type of recycling, like just I'm tossing into a
Yeah.
plastic bag, then where's the plastic bag go
Right.
to a bigger bag. So
Well, yeah,
then
and like how
yeah,
much of that actually winds up being recycled? Like the amount of plastic that actually gets recycled is a very small percentage of
mm-hmm,
what's out there. So, I mean, yeah, it is a huge problem. I mean, it's similar to a lot of other, like you said, and it requires coordination of a lot of different things at
yeah,
once. Um, the problem with this kind of biotechnology too also is that I mean in terms of most of what people are trying to make is bioenergy, and so it's
yeah,
really whether it's worth it or not depends on the price of oil. So
yeah, yeah,
when oil is
yeah,
expensive,
yeah,
everybody's really interested in it, and then
yeah,
when oil is cheap again, it becomes not nearly as attractive. And
yeah,
so, it means that like the oil producing countries can kind of like drive it out of business by just increasing supply, right? Like you basically, they can just pump more oil and then the price goes
yeah,
down and then it's
yeah,
no longer competitive. And
yeah,
so it's kind of, it goes through these cycles. Like when oil was very expensive, there was a
yeah,
lot of interest and people were talking about it a lot, and there's a lot of investment and there's a lot of
yeah.
research.
I agree. Yeah, I recently traveled to New Mexico where the gas is only $2. Well, the 97,
Yeah.
no, 91 is only $2.10,
Yeah.
and immediately I want to live there, for the rest of
Yeah.
my life. So, and I talked to
Yeah.
some of the vehicles owner over there. I asked them the
Mhm.
opinion on like EV cars and hydrogen cars, and
Yeah.
they super
Not worth
against it.
it.
Yeah,
Well, it's
they
not worth
super
it.
against it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
like I think that might be leading to the misconception on the
Mhm.
EV vehicles, because I know Toyota been trying to push the hydrogen vehicle for a couple of years back in the during the COVID years, but they didn't really succeed because Elon Musk really had built like this EV car was the next next thing for the future. But we did a lot of
Yeah.
research on it, so like for manufacture one EV car is actually causing more damage than a gas engine car. But I also talked to a lot of my friend, also car buyers. They still would
Mhm.
prefer EV car because they just think, oh, we don't use gas in our cars,
Yeah.
so we're saving the planet and
Well,
in a different
I
way.
mean,
So
over the lifetime of the car or in the manufacture of the car.
over the manufacturing, also the lifetime, the lifespan of the car, because I think
Yeah.
those battery are causing a lot of toxic materials into our atmosphere and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Uh, I know you mentioned on the business side of it, or and then another thing I want to ask is like, is there a difficulty on the science side of it, of like mass production, on this biodegradable um material? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, a big part of the research that we do is really about sort of understanding the growth of algae, because um, like growing, like the productivity of like agriculture has increased tremendously, right? So like,
yeah.
how much corn or soybeans you get out of a field, has
Hmm.
gone up, just enormously.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been, so with algae, you can produce a tremendous amount, but it's sort of unreliable. Like they, because they're microorganisms, they grow
Yeah.
really, really fast. But they also, they get like epidemics, and they get attacked by various things. They get bacteria, they get viruses.
Hmm.
And so, it's not, when you're trying to, crank out as much material as you possibly can, you can have all these situations where your crop fails basically, like
I
your
see.
algae goes, they go bust, and they can die really fast. So there's a lot of kind of unknown just sort of the practice of how to grow algae in a way that's really reliable, that you get a
Hmm.
really, consistent yield out of your system. And so a lot of that is about just because it's microorganisms, they grow really fast, but they also die really fast. And so a lot of it
Yeah.
is about sort of understanding what their pests are, what their natural enemies are,
Hmm.
how, what are the best sort of approaches for growing them that sort of
Yeah.
minimize these kinds of failures. Um, and so that's what we work on a lot, is really understanding sort of the interactions between
Yeah.
algae and other microorganisms like viruses, bacteria, fungi, things like that.
I see. That is so cool. Yeah. Yeah. That is so
Thanks.
cool. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. The engineer. Yeah. So yeah, because
Yeah.
we don't see that a lot. I study accounting, so every day I'm dealing
Yeah.
with tax and stuff. So it's
Right.
very interesting to to learn about things like this. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, what is your like maybe a advice for a group like us, like a young group passionate on this topic, like where do you recommend us to spend like most of our time on? Like, is it on researching, or is it like on interviews, or etc.
I think I think making it make sense as a business. You're doing the right thing. What we need is business people who can make it make sense as a business. Like, I think, many of the scientific challenges we've made a lot of advances. We're doing a lot better than we used to
Yeah.
do. And, it's really, it's really about scaling. It's really about going
Yeah.
from doing things in sort of small niche markets and moving to like big not niche markets. And that's just requires a level of business smarts that most scientists are not going to have. And so we need you guys to be able to do that. Like, that's and there's companies that are having sort of success in various somewhat
Yeah.
modest ways, but not really breaking through. And I know there's demand. I mean, we've talked with like Patagonia, that makes like clothing,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
really interested in their, like, we want to, they're talking about things you were talking about, like we want to replace the materials in our clothes with something that's
Yeah.
not going to persist. But we haven't found a reliable way to do that yet. Like, we're trying to, speed the research up so that, we can get
Yeah.
sources of materials that make sense for our business, and that are gonna be better in these ways.
I
So,
see. I see.
I think you're, really just, it's really about, scaling, and, you can do all of this modeling to say, okay, this is, so we work with engineers who do what's called techno-environmental assessment,
Hmm.
techno-economic assessment, TEA, just sort of modeling the whole process and saying like,
Yeah.
okay, what would it take for this to make sense out of the business? Like, it's sort of like, what is the, equivalent price? What is the price of, this material going to be
Yeah.
under these circumstances? Um, and that's really, sort of understanding it as a business process, and all of the inputs and all of the costs and everything. That's really sort of what's preventing this from becoming a major, sort of really kind of replacing the materials we have now that are, you
Yeah.
know, like you said, some people might pay a price premium, but it's not going to
Yeah.
be an enormous price
Yeah.
premium.
Yeah. I agree. I think to maybe to reduce the mass of plastic pollution, we need to focus on like on in the middle class of the middle income group, because they
Totally,
they are they are the
totally.
they are the most effective group in our society. I
Yeah,
I had
absolutely.
a conversation with I think it was a professor at Stanford, and he kind of mentioned this yesterday. It's like, instead of being the last defense of this situation, he says like, a research team should be like the first defend on reducing plastic waste that go into the ocean. So
Mhm.
I that's why we start thinking like, oh, maybe if there's like a new type of fiber we can use applying it in the
Mhm.
textile industry or in the garment industry, then maybe
Mhm.
we can, instead of being the last defend, we
Yeah.
can be the first defend to to reduce the waste in
Yeah.
the beginning. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, I mean, like reducing the inputs, right? I mean, always, you see people talk about like, sort of going and removing plastic from the ocean.
yeah,
And it's like people don't understand how big the ocean is, right? Like it's not,
yeah,
there's no, it's they
yeah,
don't understand the scale of that
yeah,
challenge and that problem
yeah,
and the energy that would be required to do that. So I mean, sort of reducing the the supply side rather than the sort of
yeah,
end end situation for sure. But I think a lot of, like sort of starting out with these kind of smaller market products and sort of building up the technology from there. So these companies that are making, different kinds of, pharmaceuticals and nutrient supplements and things,
yeah,
nutritional supplements, like, they are sort of developing the technology for producing more and more
yeah,
that will allow you to make other products. So I think it is really important to start out in these somewhat more narrow markets and
yeah,
then sort of improve the technology to the point where you can like say, okay, now we're going to go on to these, we're going to be able to produce more. If you show you can produce a reliable stream of some material, then that will make it easier to go on to the next thing
yeah,
and eventually it will be like, okay, yeah, this makes sense for making clothing and whatever else.
yeah, yeah. I do agree with that because I think if we don't slow down or we don't reduce the massive production or supply,
Mhm.
there's just going out there, going to the ocean, to the river, recycling those plastic, and turn those
Yeah,
plastic into like bracelets or is such a waste. Like we're not solving the problem. We're continue
yeah,
causing the problem become worse. Well, one of another question I want to ask is like, is there something we should ask, or is there something I should ask on this topic that I haven't get a chance to ask because I'm not really an expert or any in this industry. So maybe is there like a
yeah.
question I should ask?
Um, that's a good question. Uh, yeah, I mean, I would talk to people at Algenesis
Hmm.
Materials. Um, and I mean, I have, we have various industrial partners that we work with. And
Yeah,
so, we have some idea of their challenges. Um, they're not always all that forthcoming about them because they have their business model and they don't necessarily want to tell you what
yeah,
problems they have.
yeah,
So it's sometimes a little bit hard to get a very straight picture from them. But yeah, I mean, there's like the technical problems, and then there's just the sort of scaling economic problems. I don't yeah, I can't think of right now like what like who, if you were to
yeah.
talk to, people who are in this sort of startup space of this industry who are like,
Hmm.
starting, sort of colonizing new industries,
Yeah,
like what problems have they run up against? Um, yeah, I don't really know. I wish I could tell you, but
yeah. 'Cause
yeah,
that is something our team like to ask because none of us are
yeah.
have any experience in this in this field, so that's something we would like to ask. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of focused on my little corner of it, and I don't, what's really preventing, these companies from really like, you know, growing as they would like to. I don't really know. I don't, I'm not.
I see that.
I and I know that they, there was
They
a
all want
company.
yeah,
Well, and
yeah,
they also don't want to. They'll tell you everything's going great, like kind of no
yeah.
matter what. Like there was one called Sapphire Energy that we worked with a bunch, and they were making like, well, they were doing like bioenergy stuff. huge facility in New Mexico, where they were growing algae and making oil. And
Yeah.
they said everything was going great until the day they went out of business. Like I don't, so I don't know, like, I don't really know. I don't feel
Yeah.
like I really know from talking to them, like what is really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. But
Because they,
I'm assuming so their problem is having like business, issue with their business, like, but wasn't related with scientific side of it.
yeah, I mean, a lot of them, so like, I mean, they got a huge investment from like Bill Gates from Microsoft or whatever, and like Viridos, the other big one here that does the aviation fuel stuff, they got a huge investment from ExxonMobil, and so they started out, with a whole bunch of money, and we're supposed to be their seed money that would let them,
Yeah.
bring, ultimately, capitalize something. And I think, Viridos is still trying, and they might eventually succeed. I don't know. I mean, it's such a big industry that, it's everything happens on a really slow, long time scale, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not, it's not like you're gonna invent some product and tomorrow be, you know, it's gonna be taking over the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there anyone else you believe we should talk to, that would help us, to maybe, get farther or deeper understanding in this industry?
I mean, the two people that I deal with, I'll type in the chat their names. So there's Ryan, how do you spell his name? Simkowskiwa, Algenesis Materials. So Ryan is the scientific director or whatever of Algenesis. And then Jay McCarran, Viridos. Jay is like the director of biotechnology at Viridos. So those are the two people I know that are, trying to make this make this business work.
I see. I see. Well, Professor, is there a chance we could, maybe, perhaps go visit you in the office, or maybe go visit your lab, during
Sure.
the weekdays? Yeah, because I think the things you guys are working on is so amazing that we have to see it. Like, in
Okay.
your eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not that much to see right now. We just finished a 3-year experiment.
Uh-huh.
But I can show you what we've got in our lab, and I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, because working on this, I mean, project, we don't really have a mentor. This
Mhm.
was a UC online project, a UC online class that hosts UC Santa Cruz. It used to be hosted at UC San Diego.
Mhm.
The other team, they all have a mentor that, can leading them on the topic they're searching for. But for us, we
Yeah.
we don't really have a mentor. So, I just want to ask, like, would you be consider, like, be like, our mentor on the scientific side? And maybe, if we have anything that we don't understand, we can, go out to you to, maybe see experience, or, information from you.
I mean, sure. I probably will not be able to help you with a lot of questions that you have about the business side of that.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to serve as your mentor and be, yeah. I mean, so what is your end goal with this project? Like, what do you have is this part of your degree? Is this
No.
meeting with
So
this is just on
this
the
was
side. This
something
is
fun for us because,
okay.
we're
Yeah.
almost up. I mean, I'm a accounting major. I'm almost, passed all my
Hmm.
CPA exam, so I don't really need to
Okay.
work on this field. But this was definitely
Yeah.
something we have in mind, that at least for all of our team member, like, we want to actually solve this problem and reduce, and, provide like
Yeah.
a better environment, for our community and stuff. So we're
Yeah.
working on this topic for our passion. So that's why we're so motivated, and we're trying to just pick, people's brain and learn from their experience and insight from, from
Yeah.
their years of, in the industry. So far,
Hmm.
we have talked to a professor at Stanford, she's a great to be like our business side of mentor. She's the Google Map founder. She worked for
All
Google for
right.
20 years. So,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
but she don't really have a lot of experience in like in the science, side of it. So that's why
Mm-hmm.
our team are still like just mumbling right now, like just trying to figure it out like what should we do.
Yeah.
We're right now we're considering like going to the garment industry and also going to construction blocks because
Mm-hmm.
we talked to the city official at Phoenix. They have used like a lot of plastic, materials building the or
Mm-hmm.
plastic recycled blocks, building those like shelters for homeless. So that was something
Mm-hmm.
we're also looking at right now, and also maybe we're
Mm-hmm.
also like doing research and also interview with manufacturers on water futures because we learned like
Mm-hmm.
every time we wash our clothes, there's like massive microplastic are actually going to the water source.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still browsing around in different industry because we don't
Sure.
like I said before, like we don't have really a mentor can guide us into
Yeah.
like a field we can jump into. But we're super
Yeah.
passionate, like
Yeah.
because
Well, that's
we all
great.
know this thing is
Mm-hmm.
something that we don't do that
Mm-hmm.
our future generation have to deal with. So and also
Yeah.
I think this is going to be
Uh,
a great way to build a business on. This
sure.
to have like a circular economy and also be sustainable.
Yeah. Here, I'll paste in. This is the oops, what happened? There it is. That's the shoe company that's founded by people at UCSD who are making shoes out of the plastics that Algenesis is making. So they're using
Yeah,
the same kind of technology.
yeah.
So
I think
sorry.
it's
Anyways,
great.
I
Like
was,
yeah,
mhm,
like there's like other or other group of people who already done it. Like
mhm,
on this passion because I just feel like
mhm,
that this thing is if we don't act now is too late
mhm.
for the future
Yeah.
generation. Yeah, we talked to
Well,
a researcher at Santa Cruz.
mhm,
They did a research on they did a study on the seafood that is been sold in the supermarket, and they found out there's like microplastic in there. Um,
yeah.
and those are not like cheap seafood. There's like all the
Oh,
expensive
yeah.
seafood, and we're like
Yeah.
having a chat, and I was like, if we can even control like on this thing we're eating, how are we gonna control our
Yeah.
future? It'd be like
Yeah. No,
yeah.
totally. Well, great, Jason. It sounds really exciting, and if I can help in any way, just let me know.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I will I will definitely just have our team at least for the team member who in San Diego area to maybe
Hmm.
perhaps to see the lab or just
Hmm.
get a chance to visit you in person. I think maybe
Hmm.
we could learn more from you in person because we just like our
Sure.
my partner is sick today, so we
Yeah.
can't really get it done in person today. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Let me know when you want to, and I'll set up a time for you to come by.
yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks so much.
Sure.
Thanks so much, Professor. Yeah,
All right, Jason. Good talking to you.
yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you.